Donald Trump claims he would have prevented Ukraine war. October 7th attack on Israel. In first presidential interview, Trump gives first presidential interview with Sean Hannity. Trump's interview with conservative commentator Sean Hannity begins at the top of the hour. We will be watching and bring you any significant developments, given Hannity's reputation as Trump's shadow chief of staff during his first term. It is unlikely to be challenging to Trump in any way. Here is a preview clip released by Fox, in which Trump claims that there would have been no inflation in the United States, no invasion of Ukraine by Vladimir Putin, no attack on Israel by Hamas on October 7th, and no catastrophic withdrawal from Afghanistan had he been in office for the past 4 years. Speaking to Sean Hannity on Wednesday, President Donald Trump suggested that states should take care of their own disasters, hinting at a reduced federal role after boasting about how well he did in the last election in Oklahoma. Trump said that it would be better for even a state that supports him so broadly to simply take care of its own recovery efforts following natural disasters. With some funding from the federal government, the FEMA is getting in the way of everything, Trump said. FEMA is a whole another discussion because all it does is complicate everything. FEMA is going to be a whole big discussion very shortly because I'd rather see the states takes care of their own problems. Trump gives first presidential interview with Sean Hannity. Trump's interview with conservative commentator Sean Hannity begins at the top of the hour. We will be watching and bring you any significant developments, given Hannity's reputation as Trump's shadow chief of staff during his first term. It is unlikely to be challenging to Trump in any way. Here is a preview clip released by Fox, in which Trump claims that there would have been no inflation in the United States, no invasion of Ukraine by Vladimir Putin, no attack on Israel by Hamas on October 7th, and no catastrophic withdrawal from Afghanistan had he been in office for the past 4 years. National Institutes of Health Study sections, which review applications for fellowships and grants, were suddenly canceled on Wednesday, according to social media posts from participants and reporting from Stat. A meeting of the National Vaccine Advisory Committee, which advises the leadership of the Department of Health and Human Services on vaccine policy, was also canceled. My NIH study section that was to meet tomorrow was one of those canceled. Dr. Esther Chu, an emergency medicine doctor, wrote on Blue Sky. This represents many months of work by the applicants and by the NIH staff and reviewers. Devastating is the correct word. The moves have confused and unsettled scientists and the $47.4 billion research agency, which has become a target for Trump's political allies. The impact of the collective executive orders and directives appears devastating. One senior NIH employee told Science. NIH also imposed an immediate ban of travel and a hiring freeze, according to Saiken Akpan, a health and science editor. The NIH grants placed on hold fund the work/salaries of 300K people at more than 2,500 institutions. Teams of lawyers from the rich and powerful trying to stop us publishing stories they don't want you to see. Lobby groups with opaque funding who are determined to undermine facts about the climate emergency and other established science. Authoritarian states with no regard for the freedom of the press, bad actors spreading disinformation online to undermine democracy. The Guardian is funded by readers like you in Bangladesh, and the only person who decides what we publish is our editor. If you want to join us in our mission to share independent, global journalism to the world, we'd love to have you on side. Days after freeing hundreds of supporters who attacked Capitol Police officers, President Trump pardoned 2 D.C. police officers convicted of murder for killing an unarmed black man in 2020. Trump granted full and unconditional pardons to both Terrence Sutton and Andrew Zabavsky, former officers of the Metropolitan Police Department of the District of Columbia, who were convicted of second-degree murder for killing Karen Hilton Brown, a 20-year-old black man, during an unauthorized police pursuit that ended in a crash on October 23, 2020. Hilton Brown was riding a motorbike without a helmet as Sutton pursued him in an unmarked car, federal prosecutors said. Eventually, Sutton followed Hilton Brown down an alley at what prosecutors called unreasonable speed, causing Hilton Brown to be hit by a car. After the collision, prosecutors said Sutton and Zabavsky conspired to cover up what happened. Sutton was the first D.C. police officer to be convicted of murder for actions on duty. Zabavsky, a police lieutenant, was sentenced last year for conspiring to cover up the deadly chase. Trump had hinted at the pardons a day earlier, when he told reporters who pressed him on his pardons for rioters who had attacked police officers on January 6th that he was a friend of the police and was about to free two D.C. officers. But Trump seemed confused about the details of the case, saying, incorrectly, that the officers were arrested, put in jail for 5 years, because they went after an illegal. Hilton Brown was a native-born American citizen, a lawyer representing the mother of his child in civil litigation related to his death, told the Washington Post. Federal judge says Trump pardons for January 6 rioters cannot whitewash the reality. 3 federal judges denounced Donald Trump's pardons of January 6 rioters in stark terms in court orders, formally dismissing cases before them. The U.S. District Judge Tanya Chutkan, who was set to preside over Trump's own criminal prosecution for seeking to overturn the results of the 2020 election until the Supreme Court stepped in, wrote that no pardon can change the tragic truth of what happened on January 6, 2021. Trump's action, forcing her to dismiss the case against John Banuelos, who was charged with firing a pistol into the air during the riot, Chutkan added, cannot whitewash the blood, feces, and terror that the mob left in its wake, and it cannot repair the jagged breach in America's sacred tradition of peacefully transitioning power. In hundreds of cases like this one over the past 4 years, judges in this district have administered justice without fear or favor, she added. The historical record established by those proceedings must stand, unmoved by political winds, as a testament and as a warning. Similarly, the U.S. District Judge Beryl Howell scoffed at Trump's claim, in the pardon language, that his action ends a grave national injustice that has been perpetrated upon the American people over the last 4 years and begins a process of national reconciliation. In an order dismissing the case against 2 January 6 defendants who pleaded guilty to felonies, Howell wrote, no national injustice occurred here, just as no outcome-determinative election fraud occurred in the 2020 presidential election. No process of national reconciliation can begin when poor losers, whose preferred candidate loses an election, are glorified for disrupting a constitutionally mandated proceeding in Congress and doing so with impunity. Republicans to set up new January 6th investigation. Mike Johnson says Mike Johnson, the House Speaker, announced on Wednesday that he is setting up a new select subcommittee to continue House Republicans' investigation into all events leading up to and after January 6. The new panel, Johnson said on social media, will be dedicated to exposing the false narratives peddled by the politically motivated January 6th Select Committee that investigated the Capitol riot and issued its final report in 2022. Johnson said the new panel, to investigate the previous panel and search for evidence that the Capitol riot was, as Trump supporters have suggested, somehow orchestrated by federal agents, would be chaired by Representative Barry Loudermilk of Georgia. California Attorney General Rob Bonta said Donald Trump cannot bully the state into carrying out the president's mass deportation agenda, that he was responding to a new DOJ memo that directs federal prosecutors to investigate any state or local officials who stand in the way of beefed-up enforcement of immigration laws under the Trump administration. This is a scare tactic, plain and simple. The president is attempting to intimidate and bully state and local law enforcement into carrying out his mass deportation agenda for him, Bonta said, adding that his office was reviewing the memo and was prepared to take legal action if the Trump administration's vague threats turned to illegal action. California law limits how state and local law enforcement can assist federal immigration authorities. The state has the largest population of undocumented people in the country. Bonta said Trump already tried and failed to undermine the state law during his first term when the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals held that it did not conflict with federal law or violate the supremacy clause of the U.S. Constitution. Bonta continued, California law is clear. SB 54 prohibits state and local law enforcement from using taxpayer funds to enforce federal immigration law, subject to several narrow exceptions. SB 54 does not prevent state and local law enforcement from investigating and prosecuting crimes, nor does it prevent federal agencies from conducting immigration enforcement themselves. What it says is that they cannot make us do their jobs for them. Trump and his team have also suggested using the threat of withholding federal disaster assistance as a way to force the state to cooperate The American Civil Liberties Union also announced that it is joining the legal effort to derail Trump's deportation plans. We're suing to stop the Trump administration's attempt to massively expand fast-track deportations without due process, the ACLU declared in a Blue Sky post. This policy was illegal when Trump enacted it in his first term, and it's illegal now.